The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched high above the assembled delegates. 12 different species sat in their specialized seats, each designed for their unique biology. The air hummed with tension as voices rose in heated discussion. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat quietly at the human table. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her, the other ambassadors spoke with growing anger about humanity's actions across the galaxy. "The humans have gone too far this time," declared Ambassador Zektar of the Zephyrians. His tall, thin body swayed like a reed as he spoke. The Zephyrians were an ancient race that valued balance above all else. They have terraformed another world without proper consultation. They disrupted the natural energy flows of an entire star system. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Vorthak delegate, whose body looked like living glass, chimed in with a sound like bells ringing. "Human emotional decision-making creates chaos," the translation device rendered the Vorthak's mineral speech. "Their unpredictable actions threaten the order we have built over thousands of years." Elena listened without speaking. She had heard these complaints many times before. The council members believed they understood humans, but they only saw the surface. They saw human colonies spreading quickly across space and called it aggressive expansion. They saw human traders making deals with new species and called it dangerous contact. They saw human scientists developing new technologies and called it reckless experimentation. The collective's representative spoke next. The collective was a hive mind that included millions of individual beings working as one consciousness. Their speaker was a small gray creature with large black eyes. "Individual human thoughts contaminate group harmony," it said in a flat, emotionless voice. "Each human acts according to personal desires rather than collective good. This behavior spreads to other species through contact." More voices joined the criticism. The warlike Vrex complained that humans refused to follow proper military protocols. The peaceful Altarians said humans were too quick to use force when diplomacy was preferred. The ancient keepers accused humans of changing too fast and disturbing the stability of galactic civilization. Elena watched each speaker carefully. She had studied these species for decades. She knew their strengths and their weaknesses. The Zephyrians were wise but slow to act. The Vorthak were logical but could not understand emotions. The collective was efficient but lacked creativity. Each species had gifts, but they also had blind spots that made them incomplete. "The time has come for decisive action," announced Chancellor Morath, the head of the council. The Chancellor was a Zephyrian elder whose body glowed with soft blue light. "Humanity's chaotic influence must be contained before it destroys everything we have built." The formal proposal was read aloud by the council secretary. Humans would be restricted from expanding into new star systems. Human trade ships would need special permits to visit non-human worlds. Human colonies would be monitored by council inspectors. Human diplomatic missions would be limited to essential business only. "This will teach them to respect the order that keeps peace in our galaxy," said the Vorthak delegate. Its crystalline body pulsed with satisfied light patterns. Elena knew this moment had been coming for years. The council had grown more suspicious of humanity with each passing decade. They feared what they could not control, and humans were very difficult to control. Unlike other species that followed predictable patterns, humans constantly surprised everyone, including other humans. The vote was called. One by one, each species cast their decision. The Zephyrians voted yes. The Vorthak voted yes. The collective voted yes. All 11 non-human species voted to restrict humanity's freedom in the galaxy. "The human delegation is called to cast their vote," Chancellor Morath announced. Elena stood slowly. The chamber fell quiet as all eyes turned to her. She looked around at the faces and forms of the other delegates. Some showed satisfaction, others showed pity, but none showed understanding. "The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision," she said in a clear, calm voice. "We have heard your concerns about our unpredictable nature. We have listened to your complaints about our rapid expansion and our tendency to act without endless consultation." The other delegates nodded, thinking Elena was about to accept their restrictions gracefully. However, Elena continued, "Humanity must respectfully decline to accept these limitations." Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. The Chancellor's blue glow flickered with surprise. "You cannot decline," protested the Vrex ambassador, whose scaled body tensed for potential conflict. The vote was 11-1. Council law requires compliance, Elena smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile, but one filled with knowledge that the others did not possess. The Council's authority extends only to those who choose to remain within its structure. Humanity exercises its right to withdraw from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates spoke in their various languages, creating a cacophony of sound. Some were angry, others confused, and a few seemed worried about what this meant. Chancellor Morath called for order. Ambassador Vasquez, you cannot be serious. Humanity needs the Council. Your species is young and inexperienced. Without our guidance and the stability we provide, human civilization will collapse within decades. Elena gathered her materials from the table. Her movements were precise and unhurried, as if she had prepared for this moment long ago. Perhaps you're right, Chancellor. Perhaps humanity will face difficulties without the Council's wisdom, but we have decided to face those challenges on our own terms. This is madness, declared the collective's speaker. No species has ever left the Council. The consequences will be severe. Yes, Elena agreed. There will be consequences. The question is who will face the worst of them. She walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. At the doorway, she turned back one final time. To all our former colleagues, humanity wishes you well in the future you have chosen. We hope you will find the order and predictability you seek. As for us, we will find our own way among the stars. Elena left the chamber, leaving behind 11 species who believed they had just solved their human problem. They congratulated themselves on finally taking control of an unpredictable element that had been disrupting their careful plans for galactic civilization. Chancellor Morath called the session to a close with satisfaction in his voice. The Council has acted wisely today. We will now be able to pursue our goals without chaotic human interference. The delegates filed out of the chamber, most feeling pleased with their work. A few, however, felt a strange unease they could not explain. Something about Elena's calm confidence troubled them. Her words about consequences echoed in their minds as they returned to their quarters. None of them realized that Elena had not been surprised by their vote. In fact, she had been counting on it. Hidden in her diplomatic files were communications that had been flowing between human colonies for months. Plans had been made, preparations completed, and alternatives arranged. The Council believed they had contained the human problem, but they had actually just freed humanity from the last restraint that had kept them tied to galactic civilization. In trying to limit human chaos, they had unleashed something far more significant than they could imagine. The die was cast, and the consequences would soon begin to unfold across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council. At first, the other species barely noticed any change. Trade continued normally, diplomatic communications flowed as usual, and human colonies appeared to be functioning without problems. Then the reports started coming in. Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet was the first to notice something wrong. His ship had arrived at the human colony of New Geneva to deliver a shipment of rare minerals. The planet looked normal from orbit. The lights of the cities glowed against the dark continents, and the orbital stations maintained their regular patrol patterns. But when Veltar tried to contact the surface, he received no response. "Try all frequencies," he ordered his communications officer. "Perhaps their equipment is malfunctioning." After hours of attempts, they finally received an automated message. The voice was artificial, clearly generated by computer systems. New Geneva Colony is currently unavailable for standard communications. All automated systems are functioning normally. No assistance is required. Veltar felt confused. Humans were usually eager to communicate with visitors. They loved to share stories, make new deals, and learn about other species. This silence was completely unlike them. "Request permission to land," Veltar transmitted. "Landing permission denied," came the automated reply. "Colony is operating under special protocols. Please proceed to your next destination." Veltar circled the planet for 2 days, scanning with every sensor his ship possessed. The cities were clearly inhabited. Power flowed through the buildings, vehicles moved along the streets, and atmospheric processors continued their work. But something was missing, though he could not identify what. Similar reports began arriving from across human space. The mining world of Kepler's Dream had gone silent. The research station orbiting Wolf 359 stopped responding to communications. The trading hub at Crossroads Station closed its docks to all non-human ships. Within weeks, it became clear that every single human colony had implemented the same protocol. They were not destroyed or abandoned, but they had become completely isolated from the rest of galactic civilization. The economic effects appeared first. Altarian merchant ships arrived at Crossroads Station to find it closed. The massive trading complex that had connected dozens of species was now operating with skeleton crews of automated systems. No human traders emerged to negotiate deals or arrange cargo transfers. "This is impossible," muttered Captain Raisha of the Altarian Merchant Guild. Her blue-skinned crew stared at the empty docking bays that had once bustled with activity. Humans never close their markets. They love commerce more than breathing. But the docking computer's message was clear. Crossroads Station is temporarily closed to non-human traffic. All previous contracts are canceled. Please seek alternative trading partners. The ripple effects spread quickly through the galactic economy. Human manufacturers had become essential suppliers for dozens of products. Their flexible production methods could adapt to the needs of different species faster than anyone else. Now those supply lines simply vanished. Dr. Kethmore of the Vorthak Medical Institute felt the impact directly. His research facility depended on human-made bioadapters that allowed Vorthak crystalline physiology to process organic medicines. The devices were incredibly complex, requiring both advanced technology and intuitive understanding of biological systems. "Contact the human suppliers immediately," Dr. Kethmore ordered his assistant. "We need replacement bioadapters within the month." The response came back quickly. Human medical suppliers are no longer accepting orders from non-human clients. Existing contracts are fulfilled, but no new agreements will be made. Dr. Kethmore's crystalline body flickered with alarm patterns. His research into crystal flesh integration would stop completely without those bioadapters. Worse, patients across Vorthak space would suffer as medical equipment began failing without human-made components. The collective faced different but equally serious problems. Their expansion into the outer rim sectors had relied heavily on human problem-solving abilities. Unlike the collective's unified thinking, humans could generate unexpected solutions to unprecedented challenges. The collective's central node reviewed the situation with growing concern. Their latest expansion fleet had encountered a space anomaly that defied all standard analysis. The phenomenon seemed to actively resist their probes and had already consumed 2 scout ships. Previous encounters with such anomalies had been resolved using human consultants. A human team would study the problem from multiple angles, suggest creative approaches, and usually find some unconventional solution that the collective's logical processes had missed. Now there were no human consultants available. The central node calculated that their expansion would have to stop until they could develop new problem-solving methods. But the collective's entire structure was built around unified thinking. They could not simply create chaos and creativity on demand. Communication problems emerged across the galaxy. Most species had not realized how much they depended on human translators and mediators. Humans had an unusual ability to understand different ways of thinking and find common ground between species that normally could not communicate effectively. Without human intermediaries, trade negotiations between the emotional Altarians and logical Vorthak broke down completely. The warrior culture of the Vrex clashed with the peaceful philosophy of the Keepers. The collective's hive-mind perspective frustrated the individualistic Zephyrians. Chancellor Morath called an emergency council session to address the growing problems. As he looked around the chamber, he noticed how difficult it had become for delegates to understand each other. Human diplomatic staff had always been present at these meetings, quietly helping species communicate across cultural barriers. "The human withdrawal is causing temporary disruptions," the Chancellor announced. His blue glow dimmed with worry. "But we must not panic. They will return when they realize how much they need our galactic community." The Vrex ambassador's scales rattled with skepticism. What if they do not return? Our military coordination with human forces has been essential for border security. The Shadowkin raiders have already increased their attacks since humans disappeared from patrol routes. "Humans cannot survive alone," insisted the collective's speaker. "Their chaotic nature requires the stability that only the Council can provide. They will return when they face serious challenges." But privately, many delegates were beginning to question this assumption. The automated messages from human colonies suggested careful planning rather than chaotic retreat. The simultaneous coordination across all human space indicated organization on a scale that impressed even the collective. Most disturbing were the sensor readings from human space. Long-range scans detected massive energy signatures moving between human worlds. Ships were traveling along routes that no one had known existed. The humans appeared to be using technologies that the Council had never seen before. Perhaps, ventured the Altarian delegate quietly, we have underestimated human capabilities. The chamber fell silent at this suggestion. For decades, the Council had viewed humans as a young, chaotic species that needed guidance and control. The possibility that humans had been more advanced than they appeared challenged everything the Council believed about galactic civilization. As the emergency session ended without resolution, delegates returned to their quarters with growing unease. The human departure had seemed like a solution to their problems, but it was beginning to feel like the start of something much larger and more concerning. Across the galaxy, automated systems on human worlds continued their work. Cities functioned normally, defenses remained active, and infrastructure operated smoothly. But the humans themselves had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The question that haunted everyone was simple. Where had they gone, and what were they planning to do next? 6 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy faced its first major crisis without human involvement. The Void Plague had returned. Commander Thexval of the Vrex Defense Force stared at the tactical display with growing horror. The dark energy phenomenon was spreading through the Rigel sector, consuming everything in its path. Stars dimmed and died, planets cracked apart, and even space itself seemed to wither where the plague touched. How many systems have we lost? Thexval asked his tactical officer. 7 confirmed, sir. 3 more are showing early contamination signs. Thexval's scaled hide rippled with patterns of fear and anger. The Void Plague had appeared twice before in recorded history. Both times it had been stopped only through the combined efforts of all galactic species working together. More importantly, both times the solution had come from human strategists who thought differently than everyone else. Contact the Council immediately, Thexval ordered. We need to implement the previous containment protocols. But when the emergency council session convened, the delegates quickly realized they faced a terrible problem. The containment protocols existed in the archives, but no one truly understood how they worked. The methods had been developed by human scientists and engineers who approached problems in ways that other species found impossible to follow. Dr. Nethera of the Keepers tried to explain the situation to the assembled delegates. Her ancient species maintained the galaxy's most complete historical records, but even they were confused by human problem-solving methods. The humans used something they called intuitive leaps, she said, her voice crackling with age. They would study the data, then suddenly propose solutions that seemed to come from nowhere. When we asked them to explain their reasoning, they could not provide logical step-by-step processes. Chancellor Morath's blue glow flickered with frustration. Surely we can replicate their methods. We have all the same data they used. The Vorthak delegate's crystalline body chimed with disagreement. Human thinking patterns do not follow logical progression. They combine emotional responses with analytical processes in ways that produce unpredictable results. Our minds cannot replicate this chaos. The collective speaker nodded in agreement. Human consciousness operates through individual creativity, enhanced by social cooperation. The collective mind cannot generate the random variations that humans call inspiration or hunches. While the council debated, the Void Plague continued spreading. Traditional approaches failed completely. Massive fleets of warships could not fight an enemy that existed partially outside normal space. Energy weapons passed through the dark matter without effect. Even nuclear explosions barely slowed its advance. The Zephyrian research team tried to use their mastery of energy manipulation to contain the plague. Their elegant solutions based on natural balance had worked for thousands of years against other threats. But the Void Plague responded to their careful energy patterns by adapting and growing stronger. It learns from our attacks, reported Dr. Simara, the lead Zephyrian scientist. Every time we apply traditional energy manipulation, the plague evolves countermeasures. It appears to feed on ordered, predictable energy patterns. The revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If the plague consumed ordered energy, then all of their standard technologies were useless. Worse than useless, they were actually feeding the enemy. The Altarian fleet commander, Admiral Koresh, came to the same conclusion from a military perspective. "Our formations are too predictable," she reported to the council. "The plague can anticipate our movements because we follow established tactical doctrines. It surrounds our ships before we can react." Desperation drove the council to attempt coordination between multiple species, but the results were disastrous. Without human mediators to bridge the communication gaps, orders became confused. Zephyrian energy attacks interfered with Vorthak crystalline technologies. Altarian emotional decision-making clashed with collective logical processes. During one particularly chaotic battle, 3 allied fleets accidentally fired on each other because they could not properly coordinate their different communication systems. The plague took advantage of the confusion to consume 2 entire star systems, while the allies argued about whose fault the friendly fire had been. The economic disruptions continued to worsen throughout the crisis. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries broke down as species struggled to communicate without human interpreters. The Vrex needed Altarian emotion-sensing technology for their military operations, but negotiating the deals required cultural understanding that neither species possessed. "We need intermediaries," Admiral Koresh admitted during a private meeting with Vrex commanders. "Our species think too differently to work together effectively." The Vrex officers' scales showed patterns of reluctant agreement. "Humans always served as bridges between our warrior culture and your diplomatic approaches. Without them, we cannot find common ground." Similar problems appeared everywhere. The collective's expansion had stopped completely because they could no longer solve unexpected problems. Their logical processes were perfect for known challenges, but new situations required the creative chaos that only humans seemed able to provide. The Keeper archives contained thousands of unsolved mysteries that human researchers had been slowly working through. Complex archaeological puzzles, ancient technological artifacts, and historical questions that required intuitive leaps to understand. Without human insight, progress on all these projects ground to a halt. Most frustrating was the growing realization that humans had been essential to far more systems than anyone had recognized. Medical research that combined multiple species' biological knowledge required human-style creative thinking. Technological development needed the unpredictable connections that human minds made between seemingly unrelated concepts. Environmental management across thousands of worlds had depended on human ecologists who could see patterns that escaped more logical minds. The Zephyrians had believed they were maintaining cosmic balance through their own efforts, but archived records showed human environmental teams quietly preventing disasters across dozens of systems. The plague continued its advance toward the galactic core. Evacuation fleets struggled to coordinate as species discovered they could not effectively communicate emergency procedures without human translation services. Refugee camps became chaotic as different species' needs clashed without mediators to find solutions. Chancellor Marath found himself facing the collapse of everything the Council had built. The careful order that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was crumbling without the chaotic element that had somehow held it all together. "Send a message to human space," he ordered his communications staff. "Tell them we need their assistance with the plague. Offer them full restoration of Council membership and all previous privileges." The response came back within hours, but not from any human government. Instead, the same automated systems that had been running human colonies sent a simple message. "Humanity is not available for consultation at this time. We suggest you develop your own solutions to your challenges." The message was polite but final. No negotiation, no discussion, no possibility of appeal. Humanity had moved beyond the reach of Council authority, and apparently beyond the reach of Council problems as well. As the Void Plague consumed its 15th star system, the remaining Council species faced a terrible truth. They had spent decades complaining about human unpredictability, human chaos, and human refusal to follow proper procedures. Now they discovered that these chaotic qualities had been the foundation that supported their entire civilization. Without chaos to balance their order, without unpredictability to solve unprecedented problems, and without human bridges to connect their different ways of thinking, the galaxy's great civilizations were helpless against challenges they had never faced alone. The plague advanced toward the galactic core, and no one knew how to stop it. The Void Plague had consumed 23 star systems when the Council finally admitted they needed to find humanity at any cost. Chancellor Morath authorized the largest search operation in galactic history, involving ships and resources from every remaining Council species. Captain Veltar led the primary search fleet toward the last known human territories. His crew included representatives from all Council species, though they struggled to work together without human coordinators. The Zephyrian navigator argued with the Vorthak engineer about energy efficiency, while the Altarian communications officer tried unsuccessfully to mediate their dispute. "Focus on the mission," Veltar ordered, his patience wearing thin. "We must find some trace of where the humans went." The first human world they investigated thoroughly was New Geneva, the same colony Veltar had visited months earlier. This time they used deep penetration scanners and landed exploration teams despite the automated warnings. What they found puzzled and disturbed them. The cities were indeed empty of humans, but they had not been abandoned hastily. Buildings were clean and organized, as if the inhabitants had carefully prepared for a long journey. Personal belongings were packed away neatly, not scattered or forgotten. Gardens and parks were maintained by automated systems that had been programmed for long-term operation. "They planned this," reported Dr. Kethmore as his team examined a residential district. "These are not the signs of evacuation or emergency departure. The humans prepared for months, possibly years." In the administrative center, they discovered something even more surprising. The computer systems contained detailed records of resource allocation, construction projects, and population movements that dated back decades. The humans had been quietly preparing for their departure long before the Council vote that drove them away. "Look at these shipping manifests," called the collective's investigator, its gray form hunched over a data terminal. "Humans have been moving massive amounts of equipment and supplies to unknown destinations for the past 15 years. The shipping records showed systematic transfer of advanced technologies, rare materials, and even entire manufacturing facilities. The destinations were listed only as coordinate numbers that corresponded to empty space on all Council star charts. The Vrex military analysts studied the data with growing concern. "These are not random movements. This shows strategic planning on a galactic scale. The humans have been building something huge, and they have been hiding it from us." Similar discoveries appeared on every human world the search teams visited. Empty but maintained colonies, carefully planned departures, and evidence of massive construction projects in unknown locations. Most disturbing were the technological artifacts they found. On the research station orbiting Wolf 359, Zephyrian scientists discovered prototype devices that were completely beyond their understanding. The machines seemed to manipulate spacetime itself, creating pockets of accelerated time within normal space. Other devices appeared to generate matter from pure energy, using principles that violated known physics. "How long have humans possessed these technologies?" Dr. Simara asked her research team. "Our scientific exchanges with them never revealed capabilities like this." The evidence suggested that humans had been far more advanced than they had ever admitted to the Council. While other species saw them as a young, chaotic race needing guidance, humans had apparently been developing technologies that surpassed anything in Council databases. The search expanded to the edges of known space, following the coordinate references found in human records. What the exploration fleets discovered there changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. Hidden in the void between star systems, they found the ruins of massive construction projects, artificial structures larger than space stations, partially completed and then abandoned. Scanner analysis revealed metal alloys and energy signatures that matched no known technology. "These installations are enormous," reported Commander Thexval from his flagship. "Some of them are the size of small moons." The humans have been building infrastructure on a scale that rivals entire planetary civilizations. More disturbing were the signs that humans had not been working alone. The construction sites contained artifacts and materials that clearly came from species unknown to the Council. Strange metal compositions, exotic energy patterns, and technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements in ways that no Council species had ever achieved. Dr. Nithera of the Keepers made the most shocking discovery while examining data cores, recovered from an abandoned human facility. The ancient historian's voice trembled as she reported her findings to the emergency council session. "The humans have been in contact with species from beyond our galaxy," she announced. These records describe meetings with civilizations that exist in the void between galaxies. Humans have been preparing to join some kind of extragalactic community. The chamber fell silent as delegates struggled to process this information. The idea that intelligent life existed outside their galaxy was theoretical at best. The concept that humans had already made contact with such beings challenged everything they believed about their place in the universe. The collective's speaker broke the silence. If humans have access to extragalactic civilizations, their technological capabilities are far beyond our understanding. No wonder they were confident about leaving the council. Chancellor Morath's blue glow dimmed with the weight of realization. We have been trying to control a species that was already more advanced than us. Our restrictions and limitations must have seemed like the concerns of children to them. The search teams continued their investigation, but each new discovery only emphasized how completely the council had misunderstood humanity. Hidden research facilities contained experiments in consciousness transfer, reality manipulation, and dimensional travel. Manufacturing centers had been producing technologies that seemed more like magic than science. Most humbling was the discovery of detailed council surveillance records in human databases. The humans had been monitoring council activities, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses and predicting their decisions with remarkable accuracy. They had known exactly how the council would react to their expansion and had prepared accordingly. They played us, Admiral Koresh admitted bitterly. Every complaint we made, every restriction we imposed was anticipated and planned for. They let us drive them away because that was what they wanted all along. The final piece of the puzzle came from an abandoned human observatory at the galaxy's edge. The facility contained astronomical data showing detailed maps of extragalactic space, communication logs with dozens of unknown civilizations, and what appeared to be invitation protocols for joining some vast interstellar community. The records showed that humanity had been evaluated and approved for membership in this extragalactic alliance years ago. They had only been waiting for the right moment to make their departure from council space. The restrictions imposed by the council had simply provided the perfect excuse. As the search fleets returned with their disturbing discoveries, the council faced the truth about their situation. They had not driven away a chaotic young species that would collapse without their guidance. Instead, they had freed an advanced civilization that had been constrained by association with less developed neighbors. The humans were gone, not as refugees or exiles, but as graduates moving on to bigger and better things. They had taken their technologies, their creativity, and their problem-solving abilities to join civilizations that appreciated their unique gifts. Meanwhile, the Void Plague continued its advance toward the galactic core, and the council species remained helplessly unable to stop it. Their search for humanity had revealed the scope of what they had lost, but had brought them no closer to recovering it. The galaxy's greatest crisis continued without the species that had quietly been its greatest strength. 2 years had passed since humanity's departure, and galactic civilization was collapsing. The Void Plague now consumed entire sectors, having devoured 47 star systems, with no sign of slowing. The Council's attempts at containment had failed so completely that they had stopped trying. Instead, they focused on evacuation and retreat, watching helplessly as the dark energy crept steadily toward the galactic core. Chancellor Morath stood alone in the empty council chambers. Most delegates had returned to their homeworlds to organize desperate defensive measures. The few species that remained were too busy arguing among themselves to accomplish anything useful. The economic collapse had been swift and brutal. Without human traders to bridge the gaps between different species' needs and capabilities, commerce had fragmented into isolated networks. The Altarians could no longer obtain the rare crystals they needed for their emotional processing technology. The Vorthak faced equipment failures as human-made components wore out without replacement. The collective's expansion had reversed as they retreated from challenges they could not solve. Trade wars had erupted between former allies. The Vrex had seized Altarian mining colonies, claiming they needed the resources for defense against the advancing plague. The desperate Altarians had responded by blocking Vrex access to their emotional healing technologies, leaving Vrex warriors traumatized and unable to function effectively. "We are becoming what we once were," Dr. Nethera had observed during the last full council session. Isolated species suspicious of each other, unable to cooperate on anything significant. The Keeper historian was right. Before humans had joined the galactic community, the various species had maintained careful distances from each other. They had traded when necessary, but avoided the deep cooperation that had characterized the golden age of council civilization. Humans had changed everything by refusing to accept that different species could not work together. They had pushed, prodded, and mediated until former enemies became partners. They had found ways to combine Zephyrian energy mastery with Vorthak logic and Altarian empathy to create solutions that no single species could achieve alone. Now that creative combination was gone, and the galaxy was fragmenting back into its component parts, the collective had undergone the most dramatic change. Faced with problems they could not solve through logical analysis, they had begun forcibly assimilating smaller species, claiming it was for the greater good. The hive mind had decided that if they could not generate creativity internally, they would absorb it from others. 3 minor species had already been completely integrated into the collective consciousness. Their individual thoughts and cultural perspectives had been dissolved into the greater unity, providing temporary bursts of new ideas before being overwhelmed by the collective's standardized thinking patterns. "It is necessary," the collective's speaker had explained during their final council appearance. "Individual consciousness creates inefficiency, but it also generates the unpredictable solutions we require. We will preserve these capabilities within our unified structure." But the absorbed species' creativity died quickly once it was isolated from individual experience. The collective gained knowledge but lost the very unpredictability that made that knowledge useful. The Zephyrians had taken a different approach, retreating into isolation and attempting to recreate the cosmic balance they believed humans had disrupted. They sealed their borders and cut off communication with other species, focusing entirely on internal harmony. Their withdrawal had devastating effects on galactic infrastructure. Zephyrian energy management had powered communication networks, transportation systems, and defense grids across dozens of sectors. Without their ongoing maintenance, these systems began failing one by one. Star lanes that had been safe for centuries became dangerous as navigation beacons went offline. Communication between distant worlds became impossible as relay stations lost power. The careful technological web that had connected galactic civilization unraveled as its Zephyrian foundation crumbled. The Vorthak tried to maintain order through pure logic, but their crystalline minds could not adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. They continued following protocols and procedures that had worked in the past, even when those methods clearly failed against new challenges. Their rigid thinking made them vulnerable to any problem that did not fit established patterns. When Shadowkin raiders began using new tactics specifically designed to confuse logical responses, Vorthak defenses collapsed completely. 3 major Vorthak worlds fell to raiders who simply did things that made no logical sense. The Altarians suffered worst of all. Their emotional nature made them acutely sensitive to the growing despair and chaos around them. Without human mediators to help them channel their feelings constructively, they became paralyzed by the galaxy's pain. Entire Altarian fleets had withdrawn from active service because their crews could not bear the emotional weight of watching civilization collapse. Their famous diplomatic corps dissolved as ambassadors suffered psychological breakdowns from unsuccessful negotiations with increasingly hostile species. Individual species began reverting to their pre-council behaviors. The Vreks embraced pure military conquest, abandoning the cooperative warrior culture they had developed through interaction with humans. The Keepers retreated into their archives, no longer sharing knowledge with species they deemed unworthy of preservation. The smaller species that had thrived under council protection found themselves abandoned and vulnerable. Without human advocacy for their rights and human innovation to solve their unique problems, they faced extinction or absorption by larger powers. In the midst of this collapse, the council received an unexpected transmission. The signal came from beyond the galaxy's edge, broadcast on frequencies that only human technology had ever used. Chancellor Morath activated the message in the empty council chambers, his blue glow flickering with desperate hope. Elena Vasquez appeared on the holographic display looking older but confident. Behind her, the view showed a vast space station unlike anything the council had ever seen. Beings of multiple species moved through the background, but none of them were familiar to galactic civilization. To our former colleagues in the Galactic Council, Elena began, her voice carrying across the light years with perfect clarity. Humanity has been monitoring your situation and wishes to express our sympathy for the challenges you face. Chancellor Morath leaned forward desperately. Ambassador, we need your help. The plague cannot be stopped without human assistance. Name your terms. But Elena continued speaking as if she had not heard him. The transmission was a recording, not a live communication. We understand that our departure has created difficulties, she said. These consequences were predicted and are not unexpected. Every action creates reactions, and every choice has results that must be accepted. The view behind Elena showed glimpses of technologies that defied understanding. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy beings that moved through solid matter, and structures that appeared to be built from crystallized space-time itself. Humanity has found new frontiers among civilizations that value creativity alongside logic, chaos alongside order, and individual inspiration alongside collective wisdom. We have learned that the galaxy we left behind was actually quite small compared to the universe that exists beyond its borders. Chancellor Morath's glow dimmed, with growing despair as he realized Elena was not offering to return to those species that supported our departure. We thank you for freeing us from limitations we had accepted for far too long. To those that opposed us, we hope you will eventually learn to value the very differences that make cooperation both challenging and worthwhile. The transmission showed more views of the extra-galactic civilization humanity had joined. Massive structures that spanned entire star systems, fleets of ships that moved through dimensions instead of space, and beings whose very existence challenged conventional understanding of life and consciousness. Perhaps someday, when your species have grown beyond the need for rigid hierarchies and inflexible thinking, we may meet again as equals. Until then, we wish you success in solving the problems you have chosen to face alone. Elena paused, and for a moment her expression showed something that might have been sadness. The solutions to your current crisis exist within your own capabilities. Humans never had special powers or unique technologies that other species lack. We simply refuse to accept that problems were unsolvable, or that different ways of thinking could not be combined productively. The message was ending, but Elena had one final statement. The chaos you feared in human thinking was never destruction. It was the creative force that allows impossible things to become possible. Until you learn to embrace your own chaotic potentials, you will remain limited by the very order you sought to preserve. The transmission faded, leaving Chancellor Morath alone in the empty chamber. Outside, the galaxy continued its collapse as species retreated into isolation, and the void plague advanced unopposed toward the galactic core. Humanity had not just departed. They had evolved beyond the need for galactic civilization entirely, leaving their former partners to face the consequences of valuing control over cooperation